Informer.
Good morning. I'm Edward Bace, and my topic today is Jean-Baptiste Mathey, a French architect of Italian designs in Bohemia. In Prague, capital of the Czech Republic, the Old Town Tower guards the entrance to the Charles Bridge. Behind it lies the square of the Knights of the Red Cross, Křižnovnice náměstí in Czech, named after the convent on the square's north side. The name of the square refers to the Bohemian order of knights who settled in Prague in the 13th century. Their task was to keep the bridge in good condition and collect tolls. Some more views of the Church of St. Francis of Assisi, built by Jean-Baptiste Mathey. Note the dome, the broken pediment, pilasters, the statuary, the curved sides. As far as the location, here on the map of Prague, you can see the Charles Bridge crossing the Vltava River with the tower on the east end, and just adjacent to that is a small square where the church lies in the old town. It's one of the smallest squares in Prague, and yet also one of the most visited because of the Charles Bridge. It also forms part of Prague's royal route and reflects Prague's development as a city. Much has been written about the royal route and how it weaves through Prague. The square was unrecognizable when King Charles IV created the route in the 14th century. St. Agnes of Bohemia built the hospital and its church. She laid the foundation stone on May 21st, 1252. A huge fire damaged it, and a new Baroque temple took its place in the 17th century, which is the building visible today. On the east side of the square lies the Church of the Holy Savior, Kostel Nezvetestého Salvatora. The church belonged to the Jesuits and was part of the Clementinum, the former Jesuit monastery in Prague. This monastery extends around 5 courtyards, and within the grounds there are 3 churches, making it the largest historical complex in Prague. It was the 3rd largest Jesuit college in the world in its heyday. Today, the Clementinum is home to the university library and houses more than 5 million books. In the middle of the square stands a large bronze statue of Charles IV, who lived between 1316 and 1378, the King of Bohemia and Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. It was placed there in 1848. The Old Town's Tower Bridge is a jewel of Křižnovnice náměstí. This Gothic tower now serves as a gateway to the Charles Bridge, but was originally one of the towers to defend the city against invaders. Here's an image of St. Agnes of Bohemia, shown bestowing her monastery. On land donated by her brother, Wenceslaus I, King of Bohemia, she founded the Hospital of St. Francis between 1232 and 1233, and 2 friaries for the Franciscan friars who had just come to Bohemia at her brother's invitation. Through them, Agnes learned of Clare of Assisi and her order of poor ladies, the monastic counterpart of the friars. She began a correspondence with Clare, which lasted for over 2 decades. Agnes built a monastery and friary complex attached to the hospital. It housed the Franciscan friars and the poor Clare nuns who worked at the hospital. This religious complex was one of the first Gothic buildings in Prague and was the first poor Clare community north of the Alps. In 1235, Agnes gave the property of the Teutonic Knights in Bohemia to the hospital. She herself became a member of what became known as the Franciscan Poor Clares in 1234. As a nun, she cooked for and mended the clothes of lepers and paupers, even after becoming abbess of the Prague Clares the following year. As can be seen in their correspondence, Clare wrote with deep maternal feelings towards Agnes, though they never met. A lay group working at the hospital was organized by Agnes in 1238 as a new military order dedicated primarily to nursing, known as the Knights of the Red Cross with the Red Star, following the rule of St. Augustine. That next year, Agnes handed over all authority over the hospital she had founded to these monastic knights. They were recognized as an order by Pope Gregory IX in 1236 and 37. And there's the order emblem of the Knights of the Cross with the red star. In 1942, the Gestapo occupied the monastery, and after the Nazi occupation, the communist regime attempted to eliminate the order. The Knights of the Red Cross went into exile in Vienna, and in 1998, the order resumed its activities in the Czech Republic. The foundation of the current church is thus the original one from St. Agnes' time. The architect who designed the current church was Jean-Baptiste Mathey. This church is associated with the beginning of Bohemian Baroque and is an important Czech monument commemorating St. Francis of Assisi, the mentor of Clare. The full name in Czech is Kostel svatý Františka Serafinského, or Church of St. Francis Seraph, or known in German as Kreuzherrenkirche. In 1224, 2 years before he died, it is believed that St. Francis of Assisi and a few of his brothers made their way to Tuscany, to a mountain called La Verna, to pray and fast in preparation for the feast of St. Michael the Archangel on September 29th. But near the Feast of the Holy Cross, which is celebrated on September 10th, St. Francis prayed that he might experience in his own body the sufferings of Christ. Shortly afterwards, in an ecstatic vision, St. Francis saw a holy seraph angel. It had 6 wings, 2 above the angel's head, 2 extended for flying, and 2 covering its body, which was that of a crucified man. When the vision ceased, St. Francis saw that he had wounds in his hands, feet, and side, the sacred stigmata. His Franciscan order, also known as Capuchins, were recognized by the Pope shortly afterwards, and along with other recently established orders, such as the Jesuits, it played a role in reinforcing the Counter-Reformation in Bohemia and other lands in the 17th century. In addition to the Jesuits, other Roman Catholic religious orders owe their origin to the Reformation. The Capuchin friars renewed the ideals of the Franciscan order, and by their missions both within and beyond the historical boundaries of Christendom, they furthered the revival of Roman Catholicism as embodied in the Counter-Reformation, which had enormous influence in Bohemia. So here is a view of the interior of the Church of St. Francis in Prague. Note the dome and the apses, as well as the Baroque decoration. One key external feature of St. Francis' Church is its huge dome. Best seen from the Charles Bridge, it is almost 41 meters high and was a feat of engineering at the time of construction. Inside, the unique oval plan provides excellent acoustics. Here's an attempt at the floor plan. It should be a little more elliptic than what is shown here, but we'll refer to some other parallels. The church boasts the second oldest organ in Prague, which dates back to 1702. Both Mozart and Dvorak played it. The church often hosts organ concerts. Prague's Archbishop Jan Bedřich of Waldstein consecrated the new church in 1688. Mathey undertook other commissions for this archbishop, including his palace in Prague, as well as the suburban palace Chateau Troya and Duškov Castle in the north of Bohemia. Jean-Baptiste Mathey was a French architect born in Dijon around 1630. He died in Paris around 1695. He studied for 12 years in Rome, primarily under Carlo Rinaldi, one of the leading architects in 17th century Rome. Rinaldi is the architect who also designed the twin churches on Rome's Piazza del Popolo, among others. This helps to explain why Mathey's work combines Italian with French elements. He enjoyed a remarkable career in which his French planning and devotion to classical rationality, as opposed to the overwhelming luxuriance of Italian Baroque, were a conscious artistic challenge to established taste. He received Prague citizenship in 1684, but never joined a guild. Carlo Rinaldi, his Italian mentor, worked on several churches in Rome. He assisted his father Girolamo in the design and execution of Sant'Agnese in Agone on the Piazza Navona in Rome. And we have no images identifiable of Carlo Rinaldi, but here is one of his father Girolamo, who lived across the boundaries between the 16th and 17th centuries. His son Carlo living between 1611 and 1691. So the collaboration on which they worked together, here's the facade of Sant'Agnese in Agone, started around 1652. The plan of Sant'Agnese is a bit unusual for Roman churches of the time, being circular and in the form of a Greek cross due to the compressed space available. It is apparent that Mathey faced a similar constraint when rebuilding St. Francis. Note also the ribbed domes and pilasters in both churches, which you can see here in Sant'Agnese. Other Roman churches of Carlo Rinaldi, oh, here's the plan of Sant'Agnese in Agone, showing the circular plan punctuated by apses, not dissimilar to what we see in St. Francis. Other Roman churches of Carlo Rinaldi show the characteristic broken pediments and pilasters, a style adopted by Mathey. So here is Rinaldi's Santa Maria in Campitelli in Rome, begun around 1659, where we see the characteristic elements, pilasters and broken pediments, windows. Here's another simpler facade of the Church of Gesù e Maria by Rinaldi, begun around 1671, where we clearly see that the influence, again, pilasters and broken pediments and window. And lastly, what I think is perhaps the closest parallel, the facade of San Gregorio Magno in the Roman suburb of San Monteporzione Porticatone, begun around 1672, where we see the relatively simple facade replicated to some degree in the Church of St. Francis in Prague. Again, the broken pediment, the pilasters, and the window. With the commission of Piazza del Popolo, however, Rinaldi seemed to have a bit more scope for expression. He designed the twin churches in 1661. The Pope sanctioned the designs for the entire Piazza del Popolo in November of that year, 1661. It's interesting to note that Rinaldi and Rome also had connections with the Jesuits, as we observed an order of great influence in Prague, which occupied the Clementinum around the corner from St. Francis's Church. This order has been described as the shock troops of the Counter-Reformation, being perhaps the primary order involved in promoting the Counter-Reformation. Both the Piazza del Popolo churches show the characteristic ribbed domes, but possess the luxury of porticos, as we see. The abundant statuary and curved sides also recall the design of St. Francis's Church. The columns in Prague give the impression of three-dimensionality, but since the square is small, Mathey recessed the columns into the facade. Had there been space, the church could have had a portico. In fact, Rinaldi's original designs for the Piazza del Popolo churches called for recessed columns also. The portico and the columns seen today in Rome are a later change. In other words, Rinaldi's first design was very similar to Mathey's church. Now, here's a view of the one of the churches, Santa Maria dei Miracoli, which you can see in a little bit more detail. Between the recessed columns and the shape of the facade are evident the similarities in the design, including the semi-elliptical floor plans. So here's the interior of Santa Maria dei Miracoli, which possesses a more elliptical plan, as shown here, again punctuated by apses. And that of the other church is shown as well, Santa Maria in Monte Santo, which is more circular in design, in contrast to its twin church with a more elliptical plan. More detail on the elliptical floor plan of Santa Maria in Monte Santo. The Church of St. Francis was Mathey's first work in Prague. It reflects the Baroque work popular in Rome at the time and must have been a revelation in Prague. In addition to the Sacred Commission, Mathey was active in designing residences for Prague's nobility, including the palace and the Chateau Troya for the Archbishop. Here we see his design for the palace, which was later modified after 1679. The view of the Chateau Troya around the same time. The summer palace for the Archbishop in Prague. The Toscansky Palace, or Tuscany Palace, designed around 1690. Later on, it was sold to the Dukes of Tuscany, but it was built for Count Thun, a very influential noble in Prague. And then Duchkov Castle, again, for the Archbishop north of Prague. So you can see in all these solidity, a robustness, which may stem from Mathey's French classical training, but also incorporates elements of more Italian Baroque. Perhaps his influence can also be seen in Bucquoy Palace in Prague by Santini, which now serves as the French embassy in Prague. These all show the French solidity and robustness characteristic of the architect, combined with touches of Italian flair. These designs exhibit the inspiration of the Italian Baroque, particularly from Roman sources, combined with a degree of French classicism, and highlight the extraordinary journey of these influences, both religious and architectural, as transmitted by a French-born architect into Central Europe. And here are just a few of my references. Thank you.